The next item of business is decision time. There are no questions to be put as a result of today's business, so we will move swiftly on to the next item, which is the nominations for First Minister. I have received 2 valid nominations for selection of the Parliament's nominee as First Minister. I will now announce the nominations in alphabetical order. The nominations are Ruth Davidson, Nicola Sturgeon. I will ask each nominee to speak in support of their candidacy for up to 5 minutes. After the nominees have spoken, members will be asked to cast their votes for their preferred candidate. A separate vote will be called for each candidate, and members can only vote one. A note explaining the procedures to be followed this afternoon have been placed on every member's desk. Once all the voting has been completed, any member who has not yet voted will be invited to cast a vote to abstain. There will then be a short break of a few minutes while the result is verified. I will then announce the results of the voting. A candidate will be elected if a simple majority is obtained. Therefore, no account will be taken of any votes to abstain in establishing whether a simple majority has been achieved. We now move to the selection process. I call on Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I stand today, as others have before me, Alex Salmond and Robin Harper, John Swinney and Dennis Canavan, and half a dozen others besides, knowing that I do not lead the largest party in this chamber and realistic about my prospects of becoming First Minister, at least for now. But I stand for an important reason. There's been but one issue that has dominated the political landscape for the entirety of this Parliament, and the Deputy First Minister, seeking to ascend one rung, finds herself on the opposite side of the issue from the majority of people in this country. So today I offer an alternative, as someone who wants Scotland to prosper as part of our United Kingdom and not outside it. A member of this Parliament who wants this Parliament to work better, to use the powers it has to improve public life in Scotland, and to use the powers that are coming to limit the financial burden on families across our country. I want both of Scotland's governments to work together for the betterment of all our people, not for false grievance to be held up in order to pit one against the other, Holyrood against Westminster. It is my stated aim to develop devolution, not to end it, and to use this devolved Parliament to serve the people and to empower them, to loosen the constraints of the state, to push power into communities and to increase freedom and choice. Parents free to raise their children without a state-appointed guardian imposed upon them. Tenants free to buy their council house and pass that asset on to their children. Greater economic freedom, with more of the money earned staying in the pockets of those who earned it. Freedom for football fans to be subject to the same laws as everybody else. Freedom for parents to pick a school for their child and to have different types of school from which to choose. Freedom to break the council monopoly that says that there is only one way to teach and one way to learn. There's not, and Scotland can learn from countries where that freedom of choice has driven up standards for future generations. Reform of our public services, making them more effective and responsive to people's needs, is long overdue in Scotland. It's a debate that's been ducked for 15 years, but it's a conversation that we need to start having right now. And failing to do so hits those who rely on such services hardest, and it is a dereliction of our duty as parliamentarians. So freedom, yes, but there are responsibilities too and choices to be made. The way the single police force is being rolled out urgently needs reviewed. Simply stamping the rest of the country with the Strathclyde mould and expecting it to fit is not working. Local communities need to feel that they've got their community police force back. The messy web of justice policy needs untangled. Asking members here to vote down corroboration without knowing its replacement was an act of either desperation or hubris, and I can't work out which. We need to start from first principles. How do we better secure justice for our victims and fairness for the accused? We need a wholesale review of the law of evidence. Our NHS must stop having sticking plaster fixes. I have more cause than most in this chamber to thank our NHS. They saved not only my life, but my legs. I have always been happy to pay a contribution to my prescriptions, and the vast majority of people who were asked to do so were too. Extending free prescriptions to those who could afford to pay takes £60 million out of the NHS budget each year. Free stuff is nice, free stuff is easy, but I think that £60 million is better spent funding 1,000 extra nurses and midwives for our hospitals. Presiding Officer, I stand here today knowing that I will likely lose, but I stand to offer a different vision of Scotland. A Scotland where we value our vocational education as highly as our academic one, where we don't decimate our college places for the shibboleth of no university contribution. A Scotland that recognises that children learn differently and should have the opportunity to be taught differently, with choice driving up standards. A Scotland where local police, local services, local colleges answer to the communities that they serve, not a central government hell-bent on pulling all power to Holyrood. A Scotland that acknowledges there is no such thing as government money, only the money that governments take from the working men and women of this country, and we resolve to ensure that they keep more of it. A Scotland where government is there to help and not to hector. Presiding Officer, I stand to offer that vision of Scotland, and I promise, whether elected to the office of First Minister or more likely not, that I will work with anyone who will help achieve it. Thank you.
I now call Nicola Sturgeon.
Presiding Officer, thank you very much indeed. I will keep my opening remarks relatively brief. Let me begin firstly by thanking Ruth Davidson for her candidacy today. I suspect I'm correct in saying there's not much that Ruth Davidson and I agree on. However, I think we probably will agree today that having two women contest the post of First Minister is a great advert for our modern country. Only a matter of weeks ago, Presiding Officer, I would not have imagined that I would be seeking nomination today as the First Minister of Scotland. To be doing so is a great honour, and it is also an immense responsibility. The boots that I seek to fill are big ones, but I will do my best to wear them in my own way. And in seeking to become not just the First Minister, but the first woman First Minister of our country, I'm very aware of the additional responsibility I will carry if elected. The responsibility to help every woman and girl in our country fulfil their own potential. Presiding Officer, I think it's fair to say that recent political events have surprised all of us. In the run-up to the referendum and indeed since, democracy in Scotland has flourished as never before. We hear all too often that people have disconnected from politics, yet the 85% turnout we saw in September shows that here in Scotland the reverse is true. People are more engaged than ever in our political process. They have high expectations that we in this Parliament will meet their needs and their aspirations. Put bluntly, their hopes are in our hands. It is our responsibility as a Parliament and as a government to ensure that we meet them. Presiding Officer, that presents us with challenges, but also with tremendous opportunities. There is no better service we can give Scotland than to improve the prospects of her people. If Parliament elects me to be First Minister, I will work along with each and every member of this chamber to make Scotland a better, a fairer and a more socially just place for all. Though we may differ on the best way of achieving that goal between those of us who believe in independence and those of us who do not, I know that that's a commitment that all members will share and do their very best to uphold. We live in a new era of Scottish democracy. Those who we represent expect us to give our very best, and we, all of us, must ensure that we do not disappoint them. They expect to see us debate vigorously, but they don't want us to divide rancorously. So let us work together to create a future for Scotland that is worthy of their dreams and their trust. Presiding Officer, I ask the support of Parliament today for my candidacy as First Minister, for my candidacy to be First Minister of and for all of Scotland. A First Minister who will always have big ambitions for this country, and a First Minister who day in and day out will apply herself to the job of protecting our public services, supporting our businesses and tackling inequality. I am ready and willing to take on these responsibilities. There is a job to be done, a big job to be done. With Parliament's approval today, I look forward now to getting on and doing it.
Thank you. We now move to voting. Members should ensure that their cards are inserted correctly in the consoles. This will help the process. May I remind members that they must vote only once and they must use their yes button when voting. If any member records a vote more than once or records a vote other than a yes vote, their votes will be treated as spoiled. Once the votes for both candidates is completed, members who have not voted for a candidate will then be given an opportunity to vote to abstain by pressing their yes button. I will then announce the results once all the votes have been cast and verified. So, the first vote is for Ruth Davidson. Members who wish to cast their vote for Ruth Davidson should vote yes now. The voting time has ended. The next vote is for Nicola Sturgeon. Members who wish to cast their votes for Nicola Sturgeon should vote yes now. Right, we now move to the abstention vote. The next vote is for any members who have not yet voted and who wish to record an abstention. Members wishing to abstain should press their yes button now. That concludes this round of voting. There will now be a break of approximately 5 minutes while we make sure the votes are verified. Order. If you could just resume your seats, please. And if I could just explain to people what the delay was all about, what we have got to do is to individually verify each vote to make sure that nobody has voted twice. I'm quite sure that by the time we come to select a future First Minister, we'll probably be able to do it a lot quicker. Right, so in the vote... In the vote for the selection of the Parliament's nominee for First Minister, the number of votes cast for each candidate is as follows. The number of votes cast is 120. The number of votes cast for Ruth Davidson is 15. The number of votes cast for Nicola Sturgeon is 66. The number of abstentions is 39. The number of spoiled votes is 0. As the result is valid, and as Nicola Sturgeon has received more votes than the total number of votes for the other candidate, I declare that Nicola Sturgeon is selected as this Parliament's nominee for appointment as First Minister. Required by the Scotland Act 1998, I shall now recommend to Her Majesty that she appoint Nicola Sturgeon as the First Minister. As the first woman presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament, let me congratulate Nicola Sturgeon on being the first woman to be nominated to the position of First Minister of Scotland. First Minister, on behalf of the Parliament, may I offer you my sincere good wishes as you take on your new role, and I look forward to working with you in the future.